Hello and welcome back to the Wheel Talk podcast. My name is Abby Mickey and I'm here with the full team. All hands on deck today to discuss Flèche Wallonne and Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Loren Rowney back with us. Thank the Lord. We missed you.
Can I start with the audacity? No, we'll get to that. It's good to be back, everyone. We're going to get to that. We had a little chuckle offline.
Georgie, how?
Oh, hello, everyone. How are we?
And Gracie Alvin.
Hello. Sorry if we sound a bit off. We're just, as Loren said, having a bit of a chuckle. We'll get into it, but it's a good way to start the pod, isn't it? With some laughs and also some head shakes.
Gracie, if you don't laugh, you cry. So you just
Yes.
gotta laugh.
It's laughing in like a bang your head against a wall and laugh kind of way.
I almost want to talk about it now because it was.
Yeah, I think let's just go into it and then we'll go into the racing because I think the listeners will be like, "What the hell?"
So before we talk about Flèche Wallonne, which was the first race since the last pod, the reason that we are all laughing is because Gracie's partner, Kimbers, just saw a photo of the the freaking idiot who decided it would be a good idea to jump onto the course like in the final 20K of the women's Liège-Bastogne-Liège and ride behind the then leader on the road. I mean, like, how dumb can you be? I mean, it's the disrespect for me. Like, it's so disrespectful.
I couldn't believe it. Here in Australia on the coverage, we were actually in an ad break, so we didn't get to commentate it. But Hannah did a really good job in just being like, no, just don't. Like, I'm paraphrasing her, obviously, but like, it was just terrible. It was really shit sportsman behavior from the fan on the side of the road. I do not know what he was thinking, like not knowing the situation, not knowing who he is. The quickest label is to say that is a really bad thing to do and really disrespectful. So who knows what the backstory is, but like from first glance, you're just going, who is this clown?
What got me was, so I was juggling children at that moment, looking away from the TV, looking at it, and like I glanced and I was like, who the fuck is that from UAE? And then I was like, oh my God, that's a man. That's a man. What is he doing? I was like,
God.
he's clearly a super fan.
I was like, oh wow, one of the cyclists in there is really tall. Oh my gosh.
Like, man, their bike fit is terrible.
And then I realized, no, it's just the audacity again, rearing its fucking head. Like, it's just another example of anyway, yeah, I'm too angry about it, but I mean, look, he couldn't keep up. So maybe that's an example number one. Actually, well, there's many examples in the world of women's sport where men who, the couch coaches who believe that they could just jump into any women's sporting match or game or pursuit. This is an example of many that they cannot. They couldn't even hold the bloody shoe, even if his aerodynamics was terrible.
Just the ridiculousness of it. One of the beauties of cycling is that it's on these open roads, and so you can just like rock up anywhere on the course and see it. Like, one of the best things ever was being at the Paris Olympics, and we were staying like we couldn't get an Airbnb in Paris because that was nuts. So we were staying like an hour out of Paris, and we got a place that was like maybe a K or less from the course. And so when the men were racing, we were able to just like run out onto the road with Latvian flags and cheer on toms. And like that's not a thing in other sports. Like, you can't just like run out from where you are, like find a place on the road to have a picnic, like camp the night before so that you get to be on this iconic climb. Like, that's not a thing that happens in other sports, and it's one of the beauties of cycling. But like, people like this, like, you're ruining it for everyone.
Honestly,
you're literally ruining it for everyone when you do shit like this. And the freaking smoke flares. Like, I could write a novel about those smoke flares and how bad they are for the riders and the people and how they just shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, I definitely don't condone violence, but I was really wishing that one of the girls was going to push him or just, give him a fistful, an armful, or a mouthful. It was just like, oh, unbelievable. But they were so focused. It was actually a key moment in the race.
Yeah. Roy Ackers was quite shocked though. Like,
Yeah, she was
Yeah.
confused.
yeah.
I mean, the moto that was following her did not react nearly fast enough
Mm-mm.
to like kind of push him off of the road.
You know what my first reaction was when I saw it? I was like, why is Lars Boone on a bloody bike? 'Cause you know how like the SD Works is always like ride with their athletes? I was like, this is unfair. Why are they there?
Oh
I was like,
my
good
God.
Lord. What more do they need?
All right, we've had our chuckle now because, as you said, if we don't laugh, we cry.
Let's talk about La Flèche Wallonne, which multiple people, if they don't laugh, they'll cry at the end of this one. The weather conditions were horrendous. The news from the start was that Van der Breggen was unable to race due to illness, and I think with an eye on Liège-Bastogne-Liège, she was hoping to kind of end the spring a little bit better than it started. It started at Strada. She had a pretty decent Strada, we could say. So hoping to end on the same note she started with, but she didn't race, which obviously we talked in the last pod about how she won the race 7 times in a row, so all eyes were kind of on her. The conditions, Kasia said after the race that because the conditions were so terrible that people had stale legs, like when you start out in the cold like that, it can really be a shock to your body. And it was really a race of attrition. We had multiple breaks try to go in the beginning, and in the end, the solo rider off the front coming into kind of the pointy end of the race was Sardine Cabral for EF Education Oatly. But it wasn't really like attacks or like a ton of pressure that made the race. It was more just a race of attrition due to the conditions in the course itself, covering all the climbs with the additional penultimate climb thrown in there in the finale, which we've had in years past but didn't have last year. So it definitely made the end like a smaller group coming into the Mur de Huy. Coming into the Mur, it was no surprise. FDJ Suez were putting the pressure on for Demi Vollering. We had Juliette Labousse on the front, and she let it out really, really well for basically the majority of the climb and peeled off with like 350 meters to go, I believe it was. And then it was kind of like the people you would expect, like Vollering, Kasia, Elise Lange-Borghini, Lippert was hanging in there for a little bit. And then with 150 meters to go, Puck attacked or just accelerated. Vollering was able to kind of hold on to her for a second, but could not keep up with Puck, who crossed the line first to take her first World Tour one-day victory. She's won 2 road races in her life, a stage of the Tour de France Femme and La Flèche Wallonne. So wild. Just some wild stats for Puck on the road side. Vollering took second, and it was a sprint for third between Kasia and Elisa Lange-Borghini, with Elisa taking third and Kasia taking fourth. And that was it. It was like we've seen Flèche come down to it's like be a race of 500 meters before, and it was very much that again this year, but with the added factor of the weather conditions and a slightly changed course. It really was just like a race to the base of the Mur and then the final like 400 meters of the Mur.
Sounds like my worst nightmare.
I think I can speak for everyone when I say puck yeah, motherfuckers.
How long were you sitting on that one, man?
So long, the whole week. And I'm sure it's been said lots of times, so I just needed to get it out
There
there.
needs to be a shirt.
Very pleased.
Yeah.
I bet there is a shirt.
Oh,
right?
Imagine how much you could work that pun into so many things. It's like a verb.
It's
so
literally like scroll down in the sheet and it says holy puck.
Yep.
Loren, who's her agent? Because I mean, they should be commercializing this shit, honestly.
That's the thing. I mean, she's hot property, but I think her agent she doesn't have an agent. I think it's her dad who's, managing things for the moment.
I mean, she's so young still. Like, she's like just so fresh. And it's just insane. We'll talk about Liège-Bastogne-Liège obviously as well, but like looking through her results for the spring classics, her worst result in the spring is 10th at Milan-San Remo. That's her worst result so far on the road this year.
Nuts.
Crazy.
I mean, and what is she, 22? Something like that?
I'll fact check.
Something insane.
22.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. And yeah, I just like her trajectory is going to be great, hopefully. And that's when good management is important. And I'm sure we've already said this a few times, especially we've definitely said it about young riders in general, in that how do they get managed well to balance their eagerness, their talent, their calendar, so that they can keep progressing and not have that burnout, because the burnout is real. Like, even the best in the world hit a wall at some point, and Marina Vos is a great example of that. So I really hope that she's going to be managed well, and by the team, by the coach, if it's not from the team, and by management from the team, and if she has any other management in her own personal support network as well, because I think it would be super easy now to just get a bit too excited and just keep chasing more and more. And she's already had such a big season already. So I do hope, just for now, short term, that she gets a nice rest before the next ramp up, but like year on year as well, that they're really looking after her, especially if she's going to continue to balance cross with road.
Yeah, fantastic point.
One thing going for her is that she has a lot of freedom in how she races and what she races. Like, from what we can tell from Phoenix to Kunik, she said after this that this was one of the only times she listened to her sports director. But but I think like they aren't keen to like reprimand her when she has fun racing her bike. We've seen in races last year and also this year, like, that she just has a lot of fun at the pointy end of the race, and it might not end in a good result, but she enjoys being out there. And I think for her age and what she's accomplished so far, but what she can accomplish in the future, it's so important that she just continues to have fun and doesn't put a ton of pressure on herself. And she is very serious. You can see that in her interviews, and especially after the mountain bike race at the Olympics last year. Like, she's not messing around. She's super, super serious, but she also knows when to turn it on and off. And I think that's really, really important for her age. And I think Phoenix Kunik does a really good job of allowing her the space to keep hold of that for as long as she can, and hopefully for her whole career, because it's like that the longest careers are the people who just have a good time and don't feel a ton of pressure on them. And so I think she's one of those riders who naturally just has fun on the bike, and hopefully that will mean that she will continue to progress and have a long career, because she's so much fun to watch. And this is very much just the tip of the iceberg for what she is capable of accomplishing.
What I love about Puck as well, to your point about her having fun, is Puck races on instinct. And I think with this generation coming through now, that the radios are always in riders' ears, they're losing that. And I've spoken to quite a few DSs about this, how they're just waiting for instruction, because they didn't grow up in the era where they had to think for themselves. And I've even seen it with some juniors that even on the pro velo level, I think they've got radios in the ears. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, they
Correct
have radios. Yeah,
which I think is terrible, to be honest. They need to learn to race their bikes and think for themselves, because that's a part of it. You can't always rely on the radio, and sometimes, the DS doesn't make the right decision. And talking with some teams, like, I know sometimes riders just go, I don't think that's the right call right now. I trust myself as a captain or a leader in the team, and I'm going to make the call now because I think this is the best move for the team. And that's what's great about Puck, is she's so young and she races on instinct, and she has fun. She's not just listening into, the headpiece and waiting to hear instruction. She's thinking for herself, which is just absolutely key, because I think some of the disasters we've seen happen most recent years where everyone's scratching their head, it's like we said, it's the DSs in the car, like, trying to match their egos against each other.
I do mostly agree with that. Like, I 100% agree with that. People need to learn how to race themselves and without radios. But I think with a great example in Puck, in that I really enjoy watching her race and her unbridled enthusiasm and talent. But she won the biggest race of her career in the road by following instructions. She was told to wait on the Mur, and that was a big part from some of the advice and consulting from Annemiek van Vleuten on that team. She's been working with the Phoenix to Koenig squad, and she knows that climb inside out. She drilled down on every meter of that climb in her career to figure out how she could win, and particularly how she could beat Van der Breggen. And she took that knowledge across now in a mentoring, coaching, consulting role to Phoenix to Koenig. And that would have been a huge part of their team strategy, was to hold puck back as well. So while I really do believe that riders need to learn how to think on their feet and in races, it does need a balance as well with good leadership. And that's the difference. It's having the right person in your ear, not the wrong person in your ear at this level of racing. And with a rider so young and full of so much talent and enthusiasm, you do need moments to hold them back, because that's also a learning point as well for them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm don't have much more to add to the radio discussion, but I am happy to hear that Loren, you said her father might be managing her commercially, like with her contract, and like that to me is good news, because his only KPI is the happiness of his daughter, hopefully.
I mean, yeah, I think it can go both ways, but you would hope that that's the situation.
Yeah. I mean, even like Vanderpool, I think, are still managed by his dad, for example. I think Remco as well.
Then the decisions are made with the you'd hope so, with the consultation and the acknowledgement of the athlete, with basically the only priority being the athlete's longevity in the sport and the betterment of that athlete in deals, not just you should go to this team because I get a better cut on the commission, you know? So I think it's a better move. They can plan it more intentionally. There's no other pressure other than that of his daughter just wanting to. He's probably going to have to curb her enthusiasm, if anything.
Yeah, and I mean, we can have a whole podcast on management one day if you want, when there's a lull in the season. But I feel that, like, with super, super talented athletes, like, say, Puck, Vanderpool, Remco, I'm just going to use those examples because I know these offhand. Because they are those super talents and they have family members who have already been established in the sport, they almost don't need that agency, only maybe for the commercial partnership side of things. Because at the end of the day,
the brand's built.
They're going to land those big contracts, right? I feel sometimes with management, when management can really make a difference, and I'm speaking from the women's side, is for those athletes that just need that little bit of a push, like someone to really get behind them and back them, because it's a pretty tough world out there.
That's terrible.
Loren's new role coming in clutch.
Insider scoop.
Yeah, watch this space.
Well, I think talking about Puck, it's impossible not to talk about also her team and how well Phoenix to Koenig as a whole has done all classic season. And I think that can really lead us into Liège-Bastogne-Liège well, because it was a race. It was, I mean, for me, one of the best races of the spring. We had a lot of riders in the mix who have been kind of knocking on the door all spring, or at least in the last couple weeks, and who came good for this final race. And questions to be asked of the future and questions to be asked of the spring, but also a lot of positive notes to take into the stage race season coming up. How the race happened, I'll just break it down a little bit just so we just refresh some memories, especially my own. Remnants of the early break was brought back on La Redoute. It was just one rider up the road when the coverage started. UAE's Squiban was up there, and she was brought back on the early slopes of La Redoute, not really by any attacks similar to Flèche Wallonne, but more just pace by the peloton, especially SC Works Pro Time and Canyon SRAM Zonda Crypto. In the final 500 meters of La Redoute, Shabby and Kopecky both put pressure on the group, and it kind of made a selection of riders. From that selection, Paulina Roarkis of Phoenix to Koenig attacked, and she was off the front as the group behind swelled. Then we had Niedermeyer from Canyon bridging up to her with Anna van der Breggen and Cedrine Kerbal coming next. So we had this group of 4 riders with a gap that was kind of hovering around 10, 15 seconds. At this point in the race, the eventual winner was well out the back. We could see her as the TV coverage kind of panned across the cars following the group. You could see her chasing back with Amanda Spratt of Little Trek. FDJ was kind of the lead chasers with Van der Breggen up the road. They had Labus and Shabby on the front chasing. It wasn't until Côte de Forge that Lecourt finally got back into that group. After that, the four out front, their gap swelled. It was almost 30 seconds at one point, but on Côte de Rochefoucauld, Van der Breggen and Kerbal went, and Roericus dropped back for Puck. There was kind of a reshuffling of the race, and Puck, Vollering, Kopecky, and Kerbal were together with 13 kilometers to go. Reusser was kind of off the back of that group a little bit, and then Kerbal attacked. It was not kind of, the group wasn't working well together. Kopecky and Vollering were looking at each other, and Kerbal was like, "Okay, cool, I'm just gonna go." So she just kind of rode away. Reusser got on that group and was like, "Why the heck aren't y'all chasing?" and kind of injected a little bit of speed. And then on the final like uncategorized climb before they make the run into the city, that's where Kopecky was dropped. Lecourt caught up to Vollering and co. And then coming into the finish, it was Kerbal, Vollering, Lecourt, and Pieterse, and Vollering did the typical when in doubt, lead it out. Pieterse kind of did the first initial sprint, but Lecourt was really quick to respond and sprinted to her first, massive win. She won a stage of the Giro last year, obviously from a break, but this was by far the biggest win of her career so far, and another incredible result for Puck. And then Vollering came in for third with Kerbal fourth, which is another like really, really impressive result for her.
I so wanted her on the podium after that ride. What a day for Kerbal. Like,
Kerbal is like, can we have like a people's champ for like every
race? We should do that.
She's like my people's champ, you know?
Let's introduce that, because there is always one person.
Emma and if anyone's listening to the La Course gossip, Emma and Flirty have the Queen of the Week. I like it. I like picking someone who maybe didn't win the race, but who like definitely animated the race. And I think for this week, if you throw in like Flèche Wallonne as well, Kerbal was, you could tell she was on really, really good form at Flèche because she was hanging off the front for a while there. But man, that ride, not only to be off the front of the race with like 13K to go, but also just to hang on to that move when Van der Breggen went and Puck went, when Van der Breggen went. It was amazing. So good to see. Sarah Tizet, WNT have to just be like face palm that they messed up so badly that she was able to switch
Well, maybe
teams.
they couldn't afford her.
No, it was like, so they messed up their paperwork when applying for the World Tour license last year. And per UCI rules, if they aren't able, because they didn't initially have the paperwork in order, all their riders were free to leave. And that's when Cedrine Kerbal left to
This is pre Tour de France.
No, this was, it's like, you have to get your paperwork in order, but it was more like during the fall that it all happened quite quickly, I believe. And, but it was like, an administrative error of Sarah Tizet WNT that basically meant all their riders were free to leave because they weren't going to be World Tour, even though they were able to save it in the end, but they didn't, because of that error, they lost Kerbal.
What a shame.
Well, that's a whoopsie.
Yeah, seriously.
Big
It's like the
whoopsie.
definition of
whoopsie.
and
for Cedrine, like, she had a really rough start to the spring campaign. I think she had big ambitions. So it was really great to see her finish it off with Liège-Bastogne-Liège being the last. And then I'm sure she's going to carry this form on. I hope to see her starting the Vuelta on the weekend. So, yeah, definitely for me.
AF will want us to start the Vuelta. Plus, they don't have a huge list, which we'll kind of go into a chat we'll have later when we talk about Kopecky. But, like, they don't have a huge list, so then they'll want... I think we'll see Faulkner, we'll see Kerbal, we'll see... we might see Alison Jackson there. Like, I think they'll have a pretty solid team for the Vuelta as well. It's a pretty gettable race for them. And I think they're gunning... they're so high up on the team, on the ranking and points. Like, they're gunning really hard for that World Tour license. So, I think they're coming in with a purpose in every race this
they
year.
deserve it.
So they'll come with their A team. Yeah.
The whole race was really good. And I think some of the biggest surprises was maybe Lecourt being distance on La Redoute. There was this moment on La Redoute where Elisa Lange-Borghini was dropped, and she's had quite a roller coaster of a spring. So no news yet as of recording why she was distanced, but it just looked like she didn't have the legs on the day, just was not feeling it. And when the coverage showed her, you could see Lecourt kind of hovering around her on the climb. So they were off the back, they were dropped, and the pace up front was only getting faster. And from that moment, like, you didn't see Lecourt until all of a sudden when they were kind of coming over the top of Rochefoucauld. She was there in that group, and Spratty was there, and it went from having like just Niamh Fisher-Black for Little Trek to having Spratty in there as well, and Lecourt, and she had multiple teammates in that group as well. And but she was really like nowhere to be seen until all of a sudden she was there. And then when the kind of reshuffling happened on the uncategorized climb, coming over those fields, and she just had this injection of pace that brought her up to Vollering, and it was incredible. Like, she was going past Kopecky as Kopecky was basically like plummeting like a stone down the backside of the climb. And I think that group of 4 coming into the finish, you would have expected 2 of them to be there, and would not have probably tapped 2 others to be there. So it was just such a great combination of riders, because obviously you'd think Puck would be there with her win at Flèche. You would think Vollering would be there because, you know, she's been so specific with her races this season, and this was one of her targets. And you would not have expected Kerbal or Kim Lecourt to be the 2 additional riders in that group. Like, yes, maybe Kim if it was a little bit of a larger group, but for me, I was looking at that 4 and I was like, I cannot predict who is going to win from this group, and it's amazing.
Yeah, that moment was crazy, wasn't it? Just that moment where they pretty much Kopecky and Lecourt swapped in that group. And I think if you'd walked out of the room for 30 seconds, you would have missed it and been like, what the hell happened? I felt like I almost missed it while I was commentating it, just because there was, you know, a bit of movement there on that particular climb, but just so impressive. And I love when you see an example of a rider that is struggling mid-race and then they pull it back together and they're back in the race. I think that's actually really hard to do mentally, to just go, oh, I've been dropped here, like to not keep backing yourself out then after that and lose confidence. And yeah, like she's done the work. She's obviously got the talent, but to mentally also stitch it together in a moment like that when all of the big hitters are throwing down in the final part of one of the biggest races of the season, and to ride yourself back into the race is really incredible, actually.
I have to say, so I met Kim on Wednesday for the first time. She is not Wednesday, the day before Flèche Wallonne. She's one of the most determined athletes I think I've ever sat down with. She is 29, so she came into the peloton last year for the second time. If you go back and look at her history, yes, she is a mountain biker, but she actually raced 2017, I think it was, or 2016, on a really small team, and she came last in Flèche Wallonne. So actually, this is quite a brilliant story. We were saying that if she won Flèche Wallonne, what a story that would have been. Like, the second time she does it, she goes from getting last to coming first. But she's super motivated because she is 29, and she knows she's come into it later, and she wants to win races. And she's she's very inexperienced, because you could see even in that final straight, she was on the radio. Which I don't know if I've seen that before, but she did a fantastic job, and she should be super proud of her consistency. I think I was looking at her results, and other than Strada Bianchi and that weird Amstel Gold race where she probably would have run at top 10 again, she's been in the top 10 every race that she's shown up to. So very, very consistent rider. Very consistent spring, and it was just like she was knocking on the door. So for her to get that win yesterday was just the cherry on top after such a fantastic spring.
Yeah, I think the nature of the races this spring have just been like so hard, and teams, we've talked about it ad nauseum, the teams aren't big enough to handle the intensity. So what's really cool is I'm seeing like there's a consistent top 15, top 10 rider that we're seeing, but we're not seeing a consistent winner. Like apart from like flat sprint stage, like you get Weavers, right? But like apart from outside of that, like the podium, even the podium is completely unpredictable, which makes for beautiful racing in my eyes, because you get to see like people taking different risks, you get to see different storylines playing out. Like you could, I reckon, on every bike, I've said this before, but every bike race you can write a full book on, because there's a chapter that goes on throughout the whole bike race. Kim LaCourte would have had, like, she would have had a full story play out, like a full hero's arc in Liège-Bastogne-Liège. So I think it's like women's cycling is at such a lovely point where we do have that those consistent performers of the 15 to top 15, top 10, but that top 3 is really inconsistent, which is awesome for the sport, I think.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, coming into this season, I really thought it was going to be like Kopecky, Weavers, Vollering, Elisa Longa Borghini, and probably New Adoma.
Yeah.
Those were like on my radar, the top 5 that we would consistently see in that top 3, and it just has not been the case. It goes to show the depth of the field now and just the talent that's out there.
All the accessibility to performance, the performance metrics. Like I know even from last year to this year on Jayco, like they had 2023, there was no altitude camp before the Ardennes. Last year there was like a pseudo altitude camp where they didn't really have that much support, and then this year they did the full whack, the full shebang. I feel like teams are slowly bringing in all those performance gains, like those like marginal gains on the borders of what we'd call performance. Like you even saw Kasia and New Adoma at the end of this race say, "I didn't go to altitude before the Ardennes," and it showed basically. So like now that accessibility is getting like it's becoming more widespread and percolating throughout the peloton more. So I think we're seeing a more equal playing field along more teams this year when it comes to things like that. And therefore the speeds are getting, the discrepancy in speeds are getting smaller.
Yeah, I think like looking at the spring as a whole, there are kind of multiple riders that we can say like, oh, didn't have the spring that we maybe would have expected. And Kopecky is probably number one. Like she obviously won Flanders, like she took a victory. She had a little bit of a consistent spring, but I think the Ardennes is really where we're going to see the riders who are going to factor, like with the stage races coming up, especially with the Vuelta, and we don't have a start list for that yet. But if you're targeting the Tour, then you'd think that the Vuelta is going to be on your radar, because you're not going to do the Giro if you're targeting the Tour. In theory, like multiple riders will take it different ways, but coming into the Ardennes, I think for Kopecky, like for her to get dropped on Rochefoucauld, that's going to be setting off alarm bells in her head for how she's coming into the stage race season.
Mate, I think she's tired. Like I really think she's tired.
Yeah.
She was running point for the team and like pretty much all season. So when it wasn't a flat sprint race, it was Kopecky's race, and pretty much from San Remo where she started. And I think with the intensity of the races this year, you just can't do that anymore. So I wonder why Van der Breggen didn't step up for leadership as much. Maybe she elected not to, but that would have probably taken the load off Kopecky. But as we saw yesterday, that like Van der Breggen even was reeled back in. So I'm not sure what will happen when she gets leadership. I mean, we saw it a little bit at Binder, but
I mean, I think for any other rider, you wouldn't really read into it as much. But just because of her goals for the rest of the season, she's not been quiet about the fact that she's going for the Tour. So and the fact that she's the world champion, and we've seen such incredible riding from her in the past. That's the only reason that her getting distanced on the uncategorized climb, like coming into the finish, that's the only reason that set off alarm bells for me with what she wants to do in the months to come.
Oh, for sure. And but I think it's alarm bells for the team and not just Kopecky. Like maybe they would have been the ones managing her load this season.
I would agree that she is probably too tired. I think she stretched out her peak for a bit too long. So I think it was unrealistic to try and peak for everything. She's probably going to be mature about the outcome of this week and go, hey, didn't quite work, but I'm not going to let it affect my next run into the Tour season. But something I noticed too was that she might be tipping into the territory that Vollering was in last year a little bit. Like when you really dig down into the races, there's been a few moments where it looks like she hasn't been as well supported as I would have thought when she's been their leader for the race. So yeah, I think I'm not trying to stir up unwarranted gossip here, but I feel like there's still not like a full cohesion in that SD Works team sometimes. And I think they're still running that old tactic of like stacked with talent, we can do what we like. And they just can't get away with that as much anymore in these races. And I think like Bredewald really saved the day at Amstel because I think sometimes they tried to hedge their bets too much in some of the racing this year and it hasn't paid off for Kopecky, and she's done a lot of work. We saw that in Roubaix. We talked about that in that she was stepping on everything and ended up burning too many matches. And I noticed that she was doing that a little bit actually at Liège as well. She overrode it and she didn't have the legs to do that. So I'm interested to see how they're going to fix that for the Tour because she can't ride like that if she wants to win that kind of race.
Well, then where her, like, she's surely then the teammates need to come up and help her in those when she is covering those moves. Like, so as to your point, like, where were the teammates? Are they hanging her out to dry or?
Well, they're just
what's
not
going
there
on?
like we're used to. Because remember, we lost Rusa.
Yeah, mostly they're not
We
there.
lost Rusa and Vollering, who were huge engines. So
And both there.
they're there.
Yeah,
Like
but
that was
just-
such
and
an
they're there.
incredible moment when there was this group and it was like Vollering, Reusser, and Kopecky, all former teammates now on 3 different teams, like all kind of looking at each other. And then you had Puck just like just I can just chill here. And it was like that moment when I was like, oh my God, could Kerval take this whole race? Because these 3 former teammates that like, there's like, I mean, probably not a ton of bad blood, but a little bit of like, I don't know.
Yeah, but then you saw Roycer come in and she was like, we're not here to fuck spiders, we're here to win a bloody bike race, let's just go.
Yeah.
So and they listened to her.
It's exactly what she said in her Swiss accent.
She's straight to the point. So I like I was saying earlier. So I like she's a reasonable, logical person, and she probably had a huge amount of respect on that team. But there was, I think, the bad blood is more than I'd say. Well, not bad blood, but I'd say like the looking at each other is probably more Voller and Kopecky than Reusser. I think Reusser is just like, you quit it,
Yeah.
ride your bike.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, like, what does SD Works Pro Time do now? Because like they don't have with the preliminary start list for the Vuelta, like they don't have anyone on there yet, and we know that Bredewald's riding relatively well, but she's not a GC rider. So like, what the heck did they do?
They all need to have a rest.
Yeah, they need to have a rest
and
like,
prep for the Tour.
They can they like? I don't think they'll be sending their A team to the Vuelta. Like I can't see how they do that.
Hunting stages.
Yeah, like I think stage wins really because Canyon will have their full arsenal of climbers. We saw EF is opportunistic. We saw Phoenix is going to be a force to be reckoned with once the road goes up. Like you've got Kasteline, Royackers, and Puck, who have all proven themselves. And then you've got UAE as well, who have shown that they've got some real form and finesse as well with how they're working together. So it's not going to be easy for SD Works, but their stars can't front up to the Vuelta and perform if they want to front up and perform at the Tour.
Well, we had a question from the listeners on the member group chat, which was who's the rider of the spring? Who's the best rider of the spring for us?
Well, I was thinking about this, and if you go purely on results, Weebers has had 7 wins. So does that mean she's the rider of the spring? It depends how you define it, because I know who, like, I've got a few riders in my head who I think were the riders of the spring, just based on their trajectories and how consistent they were this year and actually how they stepped it up another level from 24 to 25. But purely based on wins, it would be Weebers.
No. It's all heart, bro. Come on. Vote with your heart.
So who's your heart pick then, Georgie?
My heart pick. I love the storyline of Juliette Lebeau. I think she's been a phenomenal rider this year, and to see her really, I'm a softie for a good teammate, and to see her really take in that role and find her home there and own it. Like, I think it's about time women's cycling like has a domestique that is like, hell yeah, I am a domestique and I'm going to absolutely murder this job. And I'm going to do everything I can for my leader to win this race, because them winning this race is me winning this race. And to see her invest in that role and be allowed to grow that. I think there's like, even Vollering's vibe at the end of races where she hasn't won and she's still smiling and happy. Like there's clearly a great vibe at FDJ at the moment, and they're doing something good, and I'm really happy to see Lebu grow into that role, so that she's my rider.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that about Vollering, that she looked chalk and cheese compared to this last year's edition of Liège to this year. So that speaks volumes of those teammates.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I think Delcourt has worked really hard on the culture. And in the brief conversations I've had with him about riders and like just in general what they're looking for in 26, he said to me, culture first above everything. So the rider has to match the team.
Chemistry works. It's magic. Bad chemistry will ruin a team. Good chemistry will make it. So I think like particularly in a sport that's as dynamic and can be quite, it's very dynamic, and people can switch and change motives quite quickly, like with like subliminally as well. Like it's not always visible. You need to have a good culture and trust and recognition in each other's work. So you can clearly see that's happening at FDJ.
I mean, they've always been like that, though. Like, they've literally always put the riders above anything else and the well-being of the riders above everything else. And now they just have the budget to sign bigger riders, but they're still doing, the team itself hasn't changed. Like, their goals have always been to win big races, but to always do it with a certain amount of panache, and they put together these teams with the riders in mind, and that hasn't changed just because the riders have grown in prestige.
No, which is good to see. Like, I mean, the same issues that startups have when they grow up into mid-sized companies, right? It's like keeping that culture and like the passion as to why they started it in the first place and moving it up.
I mean, I have to say Puck. Like, I have to say Puck. Like, every time she was in the race, she was animating it. It seems like she has really been instrumental in the growth of Phoenix Deceuninck as a team. And they're like a team that we maybe would have forgotten about a year ago. And now they're one of the only teams that has numbers in a finale like ST Works Pro Time used to have. And I think just how much she's grown as a rider, if you just look at her results, it's just nuts how good of a season she had coming off her cross season, but also just like the prospect of what she can do in the future is so exciting, and that she is so willing to work for her teammates as well. Like, she's just, I think she's one of the most exciting riders in my eyes going into the rest of the season, but also like the next like 5 years. So for me, she's probably my rider of the spring, because part of it is like who had a good spring, but also what does that mean,
for the rest of the season?
Yeah.
Or who didn't and has a lot of playing, what is it, catch up?
Well, Gracie, do you have a rider of the spring? And then we can talk about the biggest losers, so to say.
Did Loren pick one as well?
Loren, you didn't pick. I thought you said Weebus.
Oh.
You picked with your brain.
No. I said purely based on results.
You didn't pick
Weebus got 7 wins.
Yeah.
You didn't pick a heart pick.
I can take 2. I'll say Kim Lecourt and Laetitia Borghese.
Oh yeah, Laetitia.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Puck. She's my number one. I think she could take the title. But yeah, like honorable mentions, of course, definitely Kim Lecourt. But if it wasn't for some bad luck, I think Elisa Longa-Borghini could have had a massive spring. I think that she was on some career best form, maybe, or close to it, and a few things, namely that Flanders crash really derailed her. So, yeah, I think that she could have really ended the Spring Classic season in the Ardennes with some really serious results and just, couldn't quite sew it up. So, yeah, I'm disappointed for her because I think she's always our fan favorite too.
Yeah, I agree there.
Even though she's evergreen.
She really had some bad luck because she had the stomach thing at Strada where normally she would have been on the podium or winning that race, right? And then Flanders is one of her favorite races. The Ardennes week again. I mean, she pulled off a podium in Flèche, right? But that's bike racing. I think she she'll come back and we're going to see something impressive from her. But I have to agree with you, Gracie. I reckon she's probably the strongest she's ever been this year, which is terrifying. And we didn't get to see her full potential in the spring, but that just means knowing Eliza, who has come back how many times, that she's going to be fantastic in the tours.
I mean, I think like Eliza had some bad luck, and you can also throw Kasia Niewiadoma into that boat because, like we were saying, the riders that we would have expected coming into the spring to be the riders that we were going to talk about all spring long. Niewiadoma, I think that crash in Strada really derailed her spring campaign, and after that, maybe she didn't take the time. It sounds like from what she's said, she didn't take the time to fully recover from that crash and just kind of kept going and kept pushing herself, and that ended with, you know, not coming away from the spring with not the results that she would have expected from herself and the team would have expected from her. So I think like, yeah, Kasia and Longo Borghini, both of them. I mean, Longo Bongo, she still had wins throughout the spring and some good results. For Kasia, like she'll be looking at this spring, and she said in a video on Instagram that it's maybe one of the worst spring campaigns she's ever had, which I think is
she didn't get one podium.
Yeah, and that can kind of bring us into the conversations of maybe not the biggest losers, because that's such a negative way to look at it, but like teams that are coming out of the spring, teams or riders that are coming out of the spring, looking at their results or maybe how the team did as a whole and thinking like, oh man, we've got some ground to cover before the stage races.
Time they won was Dygert at TDU.
Yeah, and a few podiums from Consoni mostly.
Yeah. I mean, I think Canyon SRAM, Zonda Crypto, they're going to be, their team is a little better wired for the stage races in terms of, you know, their climbing squad and how Kasia is as a rider now in this kind of stage of her career. But they still would have wanted to get better results in the spring. And I think that like Dygert, for example, would have been a rider that they would have been leaning on who maybe didn't have the spring that she was expecting.
The Welter, though, Dygert friendly? I've had a brief look.
I guess we have to get into that, right?
Yeah, we'll dive into the Vuelta. I think we can do both conversations at the same time because the Vuelta coming up really kicks off stage race season. It's the first of the quote-unquote Grand Tours from Sunday, May 4th to Saturday, May 10th, starting off with a team time trial in Barcelona. And then we've got a mixture of stages, as the Vuelta is known to do. Two kind of sprinty stages. One of them is like there's a climb like 2/3 of the way to the finish, and then it kind of descends to the finish. So very much like the stage that I think we saw Voss win last year or 2 years ago. And then stages 4 and 6 are both kind of toss-up stages. They're like hilly but not climby, and both of them end with like flats or descents, and then 2 mountaintop finishes with stage 5 and stage 7, and both of them are significant climbs. Stage 7 finishes up Longos de Niela, which has been featured in Vuelta Burgos before multiple times. Vollering has won there twice in 2023 and 2022, and Van der Breggen won in 2021. And then stage 7 is Alto de Codabello, which has never been raced by the women in a UCI race that I could find. So
that looks disgusting.
That's going to be...
I've just looked at it.
the race, the Terminer.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a brutal climb to finish the race off. But there's definitely, like, as they say, a little something for everyone in the Vuelta. So teams like Canyon SRAM can hopefully come away with something. And Kasia said that she's racing the Vuelta in a domestique role to kind of get her feet back under her and get some fitness in the legs, but also not go into it with any pressure. So I'm not sure what Canyon SRAM's plans are, but I think Niedermayer's looking pretty good after Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
They've got a very they've got a squad to protect GC. Yeah, I think the one-day races are nice to have for them, but I think they'll really be targeting the tours.
Yeah,
with their team. Stage 7 looks disgusting.
Yeah, there's like it's just climb, descent, climb, descent.
Gruppetto at the Vuelta was always really fun. Wouldn't be fun today. Would not be fun in stage 7.
And I'll be writing a full preview for the Vuelta for Escape so it'll be on the site later this week. So if you want, full breakdowns of all the stages and stuff, I'm working on that, and that'll be up as soon as we've got kind of a more comprehensive start list as well.
6.4 Ks with like a lot of it black, and black's bad. Black's like over 9%. Like I see black on my Garmin and I'm like, turn around, go the other way. There's going to be wind. For sure there's going to be wind.
Don't promise me this, Georgie. If you're
No,
not
there's
gonna
like every
deliver.
time I've raced Delta, there's one stage, and I've only raced it twice, but there's one stage which is heinous for wind.
This is true. This is
We
true.
had like such an
Like, we had-
unwindy spring. There was like really no wind all spring.
Look, there was no wind and there's been no rain, which means it's probably going to be a wet summer up here and a really dry one down south.
Ugh.
What's the weather been? I mean, you're the closest to the race, Abby. What's the weather been doing there?
Oh, it's been grim the last couple days. It's been really, really wet, snowy, rainy.
I mean, we all saw what happens with a wet Barcelona TTT.
Oh no!
So
I do not wish that
It's not-
upon them.
No.
we don't want
Look, Georgie, maybe because it's rained so much in Spain, it's all the shit on the road is washed away. Let's just
Also,
hope.
it's like early in
That
the
is
day.
the worst
It's at
way.
like noon.
Yeah.
that. Yeah, 1
Yeah.
o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It's fine. That's like
Yeah.
So they're pushing it really early.
Yeah.
You just missed the start, Georgie.
I know.
What's
I know.
up?
I
Like,
saw the
come
start.
on, timing.
I literally land. No, I land at 7:30 in the morning. 7:30 in the morning in Spain on the 5th. So my flight to France is at 10. So I could do a sneaky out and back just to say hi to people and then have to come
10
back.
o'clock at night.
a.m. morning.
Ah, okay.
You should have planned this
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
You know what? Planning is I did a personality test for like a program that I'm doing. Actually, Gracie's done it too. And planning was like I needed to get better at it. It was like a learned behavior that like I can do it, but I really hate it. So
I need to do this personality test, I think.
very good.
Because I think I'm a planner, but my husband definitely disagrees with that. Oh no, I think I'm organized too. And he's like, you're not organized.
Sometimes you need someone to say it. But yes, I should have planned much better because I fly into Spain on the 5th in the morning and then
Okay.
straight to France. Whoops.
Yeah, I really wanted to be there, but decided not to go in the end.
There will be other races to attend.
Lots of bike races.
All right. Well, I think we can wrap up this episode. We'll be talking a lot more about the Vuelta next week because we've got a podcast after the first couple stages. So we'll break down the first couple stages and we'll be able to talk a bit more about what's to come. But again, if you want more La Vuelta preview, check out my written piece on Escape Collective. I'll talk more there about teams that perhaps are coming out of the spring with something, with some wanting more from themselves. So yeah, found wanting. I'm sick and I have 2 children that aren't sleeping. So give me a break.
Lol, join the club.
Yeah.
I will not.
Although I've only got
they
one.
tell you that you can do it all, that you can have a career, that you can have.
You can't, Abby. It's
No.
a lie. You can do it all, but not at the same time.
It's not. It's seriously not possible. Like I don't know how you could possibly do it all and be as sleep deprived as I am right now.
Well, I'm
You're
trying.
killing it.
I'm trying to juggle 2
Yeah.
jobs, 2 kids, and a husband. And I tell you what,
That harness,
you can't do it
amazing,
all.
Lauren.
harness is hard work.
Yeah.
No, I'm stupid.
You'll look back on this time
Yeah.
with fond memories. I say that as the childless woman living with her parents. Currently in my childhood bedroom, you can see my medals on the wall that my mother hangs up. I give stage advice at this stage of life.
You enjoy that.
I am.
Back to the starting
for
comment,
us.
Georgie. If I don't laugh, I will
Yeah.
cry.
I think that's a good place to
Um,
end the podcast. I think we can just end it there.